far more powerful than a list of roles and responsibilities. You're about to experience a woman who leads with presence, with clarity, and with an unwavering sense of purpose. Someone who embodies what it means to rise, not perfectly, but powerfully. Basani will take you on a journey, and it is hers to tell. It is her voice, her rhythm, and on her terms. So leaders, please help me set the tone for the space with the biggest, boldest, and the most joyful round of applause for the one person in this world who thinks I'm funny. The luminous, intentional, and extraordinary Basani Maluleke.
That's the first time I've been introduced somewhere and I'm like, damn, I like that girl. that sounds like somebody I want to be. Morning, afternoon, everyone. So nice to join you here. I'm so pleased I'm speaking after Kumo because I feel like he was the perfect person to speak before me, and you will see why in a moment. So what I'm going to talk about today is my own personal journey. We can talk about Capitec afterwards or banking afterwards if you'd like to. But, I feel like my journey is kind of this idea of somebody who broke one or two glass ceilings, then a whole bunch of things didn't go as well as planned, and then there was a return to the path that I had wanted to be on. And I want to just talk about what that looked like from my perspective, and hopefully share some lessons that I think are relevant to all of us at different times in our lives. Cool, so breaking glass ceilings. Isn't that a cool picture? So I have to tell you something. The lady was asking about AI just now. So this is purely AI generated. I think 90% of this presentation is AI. I kid you not. I literally prompted it and said, tell me about Basani Maluleke's story. I prompted it a bit more, and then I said, generate some images for me, and now here we are. It's incredible. Okay, cool. So I think for a lot of people, I became somebody. I became, I broke into people's consciousness when I became CEO of African Bank. I remember at the time, a lot of the articles that I saw and a lot of the conversations I was having with people in the media and elsewhere was, this is historic, I'm a trailblazer, I'm a role model, all of these wonderful, wonderful things. And for sure, my time at African Bank was amazing. I learned so much. I got to do incredible things. I met incredible people. I had the ability to influence so many amazing things, and I learned a hell of a lot. But of course, it still ended like this, right? Literally, at some point, I was on my knees, just in tears at how it had ended. There's this abrupt departure. These are some of the quotes that came out in the media when this thing happened. But of course, the one in the middle, this idea of a personality clash with the board, is something that just wouldn't go away. It just followed me around in different articles for months and months after the event. And of course, it goes back to what Kumo was talking about. When you have an organization that's been led by a board where the chairman and the CEO don't get along, it doesn't work. And I think he makes the point really well. You definitely, one of you absolutely must go. And so I left. But I think, also there were many things. It was a bit of a perfect storm at African Bank. You had this bank just coming out of having failed and coming out of curatorship. You had a very, very new board, also people on that board who had never been on a board before. And you had just, the regulators breathing down our necks. It was a cocktail of many things that came together that just resulted in created a situation that was very difficult for me to manage and control and to influence appropriately. And of course, the beauty of looking back on something is that it gives you better perspective. But of course, I can even look back now, with a little bit of a lighter air, because I feel like I have emerged from that horrible chapter by when I joined Capitec. And actually, earlier this year, I became the CEO of the retail bank. So this is of the personal bank. And as you know, the personal bank is 90% of Capitec's business. So it really does feel for me like getting back on the path that I'd wanted to be on when I started my career. So I thought what I would do is just share some of the lessons learned. So this, copied and pasted it from a large language model, right? So what did Basani learn? That leadership is tested not only by achievements, but also by the ability to navigate institutional politics. And if you think about, I don't think Kuma used the word politics, but the truth of, if you have two people in a room, you have politics, right? If you have 4,000 in an organization, you're going to have a hell of a lot of politics. But of course, at the very, very highest echelons of any business, you have a bunch of people who want to be the CEO, you have a bunch of people who feel they've been overlooked and so on. You have a bunch of other people who are just so happy to be there that they want to just be there for the ride. So the job of a leader in those situations is really, really important. You want somebody who's got the maturity to lead, who can build a team and sustain a team and do all these amazing things. But a big part of that is navigating politics, right? It's getting people to do what they don't want to do. I mean, I think Kuma talked about the fact that there'll be people who will annoy you. There'll be a lot of those. And you still have to figure out that if this is the person who annoys you, but damn, they're so good at their job, right? You got to figure it out. And so must everybody else around you, right? You must manage the situation. And of course, it's about managing stakeholder expectations. And of course, in the world we're living in now, for me, when I left African Bank, we were in the middle of COVID. And I think all the banks during that time had seen a reduction in their growth at the very least, and some businesses had actually made an actual loss. It was a really, really tough time. I think, being able to lead at a time like that as well, it reminds us that life is full of ups and downs, right? Like, you got to be able to lead through the cycle. And that's when your leadership really gets tested, when things are really, really bad. But maybe the bottom one there is the one that I really resonate with, right? Not all exits are failures. There are times when you have to make decisions that feel like you're voting against yourself that ultimately put you in a better position. You got to see them as a stepping stone to something else, albeit at that time, you won't know what that something else is, right? So you got to have faith in your own skills, your own abilities to be able to make the leap. And then, of course, this one just makes the point again, right? That all of us at some point are going to have a career setback. Could be big, it could be small. But you got to figure out a way to make it into a springboard into something else, because if you don't, it's very easy to wallow in self-pity and not be able to bounce back. So I thought I would use this session to talk about this idea of rising strong, because it's something that resonates very strongly with my spirit right now. So how did I get through my time in the wild after leaving African Bank and before I joined Capitec? So first of it all was about, how do you engage honestly with the story? So I could definitely have stood here, and I think I could have described that era, that time at African Bank, as the board was awful, none of them knew what the hell they were doing, they were all just, I was amazing, right? I could do that, but obviously that's not true. Right? The truth of the matter is, it takes two people to break something, and I think all of us, in one way, shape, or form, didn't show up as the best version of ourselves. And I think also with time, I was 40 when I became CEO, and I'm no longer 40. But when I look back on the person I was then and the person I am now, you can see there's growth that happens, right? And I think what you know then versus what I have to have a level of empathy for myself, for the person I was then versus the person I am now, because I think I would have handled things somewhat differently, albeit I still would have left. Then you gotta also examine the narratives that you tell yourself and that narratives that other people tell you. When things go wrong, one, we remember only the parts that hurt us the most or gave us the most joy. We gotta find a way to engage with the detail of our own stories, because if we don't, then we don't know what we're healing from. We don't focus on the things we really need to heal to be able to get to our next challenge and to succeed in that challenge. Then the last thing on the right, so I'm at Capitec, and my first team had, if you think I'm still in Bosch, I'm sure all you see in your heads is like a whole, lots of white men. A lot of them are very tall, a lot of them are very bold, and they speak Afrikaans. And there was one of them who was and they play rugby, and they drink beer and drink a lot of red meat. But anyway, so this very, very typical guy, and he was really struggling. He'd been in the business for at least 14 years, right? A lot of the guys are there for a long time. And I was struggling with this guy. we were just not hearing each other. I mean, he would be, more often than not, on any weekday, you'd find him in my office, he'd be waiting for me at 5:30, and we would leave at 7, debating the same thing over and over and over. And I said to him, dude, because he was like, look, it's not fair. Why are you here? I should have your job. You shouldn't have this job. What am I promoting? And no, but this happens all the time. This will happen to you. If it hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen to you. It's just life. So you have to sit and explain and figure out, how do I help you to chart your own path? Because if I don't do that, you're not going to perform, right? So how do I make sure that you understand what you need to do to be successful? But after doing this for a couple of months, I was like, I'm not making progress here. And I said to him, look, there's a struggle in your own mind about who you are and what you want to achieve. You need somebody else to help you through this. You should go to therapy. And he looks at me and he's like, I know, man, this thing. In fact, initially he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it, And I'm like, this is excellent. Then, of course, the following month, I'm like, did you do the thing? He's like, no, I didn't do the thing, but I'm thinking about it. Then the third month, he's like, no, man, this thing is against my religious beliefs. No, but the thing is, I didn't even know that. I honestly didn't, because I come from an environment where therapy, my father made us go to therapy, right? So for me, it's like you have an issue, find a therapist, the person. There's something so joyful about showing up at a therapist's office. You're paying this person money, né? Their only job is to listen to you. That's their whole job, right? For that 45 minutes or for the hour, whatever it is, that's their whole job. And they're qualified. They have a degree. They know how to advise you. They know how to push you. It's their job. Your sister can't do it. I mean, she thinks she can, but she really can't. Your parents can't do it because they're also worrying about their own lives and they're thinking to themselves, if this chick fails, it's my fault, right? Like, they've got their own things. Everybody's got their own thing. But having a therapist, a good one, is an unbelievable weapon. It's an unbelievable resource. And medical aid will pay for it, for those at Discovery who know this better than I do. But, and I think it's an underutilized thing. But when you're going through a great trauma, or even when you're just trying to kind of find yourself, it's more than just sitting on a couch and having somebody listen to you. It's an unbelievable thing, and I did a lot of that. But not only did I have therapy, so one thing is understand the story, understand what happens. The other thing is rebuilding your mental capacity. Right? And this is the stuff we should all be doing every day. So I love to read novels. And I read novels because I like them, I find them relaxing and so on. But more importantly, and this is a thing that I really hope, if you remember nothing else of my talk today, it is this. Reading novels enables you to find heroes or tragic people who look like you, or who look like somebody in your business, or who sound like your parents. But it helps you to understand these people better. It helps you to have empathy for all kinds of people. Because the truth is, to lead, I mean, I hear all of you want to be CEOs. That's what I took away from the first conversation. To lead successfully, you have to understand people. That's actually your job. And novels help you do that. They help you they build a character, and the character fails or succeeds or whatever it is, but it helps you to build mental models for different types of people, so when you encounter them in the real world, you know how to manage them to get what you want out of them, right? Which is effectively what leadership in many ways is about. So one, it helps you to understand people, it helps you to understand yourself and to have a lot more empathy for yourself, have more empathy for the people you love, right? Understanding why parents do what they do. A lot of stuff sits in novels. Then the next thing is just about exercise and mindful practices. So while I don't look like it, I do like to run. And the thing about exercise, which I love, is that, which encourages me and inspires me, is it's meant to make you smarter. Imagine there's a thing you can do that makes you cleverer. I mean, why wouldn't you do it? So the idea of that and meditation, the science is that it builds more connections between the neurons in your brain, and by so doing, it helps you to be faster, to be smarter, which I think is an amazing thing. And as a result, I highly, highly recommend both exercise and meditation. But the other thing about meditation, which we don't talk often enough about, and maybe it's because I've experienced it now, is meditation forces you to stop, right, and do nothing for 10 minutes or whatever it is. But what it does in the long run is it helps you to, when you're in a debate with somebody or you are, whatever, fighting with somebody, it helps you to stop and think before you answer. Because so much of life, Kuma spoke about the idea of communication. So much of life is being able to communicate well. Being able to stop and structure an argument before you speak can literally save your ass, right? It can propel a conversation in the direction you want it to go. It can help you to build confidence and credibility with the people you're talking to. It's an amazing thing. And the truth is, now there's lots and lots of apps, right? It's not as though you have to learn how to meditate by going and sitting in a forest with weird people going on. You can literally do this in the comfort of your own home. So if you haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend it. And then, of course, always have fun. Figure out how to have lots of fun and do that. Immediately after this, I'm going to go and play with her two sons, and they're like this high. It's just the best thing. Then, of course, I said, understand your story. Then I said, you got to find a way to build yourself up. And then the last thing is about building community. And I'm sure you guys have spoken about mentors and mentorship, but this is it's an underrated thing. And I think it's underrated because often we think of a mentor as, I'm going to call up Barack Obama and have him mentor me. Now, that's not going to work, right? You know, the importance of having somebody mentor you, even if they don't know they're doing it, but somebody who's geographically close to you, I think is important. Somebody who actually is invested in you, for whatever reason. They might be invested in you because they want you to become the next CEO. They might be invested in you because actually they are, it's your uncle who has watched you through your life and wants you to be successful, or it is, you know, your boss or whatever it is. But find somebody whose company you enjoy and build that relationship of mentorship, because it accelerates your growth. It helps you see the things you don't see about yourself that are holding you back. Also, you must learn to listen to this person, which is not always fun, but it's a valuable resource. Then the next thing around community is you need that close relationships with people, then you need lots of other relationships, right? Kind of the ones where, you know, you see these people once a month, maybe even once a year. Yesterday, I had a call with a friend of mine who I met in business school. So I haven't seen this guy since he got married in India, I think in 2012. So he and I were in business school in the US. He texted me earlier in the week and was like, we must catch up, right? And we did. And it was actually really cool to chat to him, right? Because one, it's the things so he lives in the US, lives in Texas. He's talking to me about how, he's there now for 2 years. Wherever he goes, people are carrying guns. He's like, it's this weird thing where carrying a gun is normal. But he's telling me all these stories about things that are so not part of my life, right? But that therefore enriched me, because now I know the stuff that I didn't know before, and I got to have a really nice conversation with somebody I love. But those relationships, more than just kind of teaching you things you're not close to, they also help you to have people you can call where you have a problem that is weird, like you need to find a new job, or you want a directorship, or whatever it is. You need those loose relationships, as they're called. And they gotta be with all kinds of people. You'll see in that picture, also AI generated, that it's people of different ages, different careers, different backgrounds. Your network can't just be people who look like you and sound like you. You have to be very, very intentional about building it and about maintaining it. Because if you don't, then also, what's the point? But this is the stuff that picks you up when you're down and helps you celebrate when you need to. So then, in conclusion, I think building resilience, I mean, somebody spoke about the skills of the future. I can't remember how the question was asked, or how do we lead in future? But the ability to build resilience, I mean, I hear this so many times. We live in a world, we spoke about a VUCA world, this idea that the world is unpredictable and volatile and blah, blah, blah. It's only become more so, right? I don't know how you guys felt when you saw that Israel had bombed Iran. It just felt like the world was falling apart, right? And then, of course, Trump decides to respond, and then you were like, whew, right? But having the resilience to read all of that stuff and still putting it away and continuing with your daily life is a really important skill. And then, of course, owning your story. I've spoken about that. The embracing the journey, which was the last item on my agenda, I think is probably it. None of us actually are in control of our lives. We like to think so. But we're not, right? When your car goes into a pothole because there's a pothole, you know, and now you must pay for a tire you hadn't planned on. and it means, your life just goes in weird and wonderful directions. I didn't plan to leave African Bank, right? Nor did I think I was going to be successful necessarily at Capitec. But life happens. And your ability to recognize that and to roll with the punches, because there will be lots of punches, and keep your face facing the direction you want to go in, but just kind of learn from all the lessons that hit you along the way is a really important one. And then the last one about inspiring others. I think the beauty of sharing your own story is, again, owning your own story, but also is an ability to really look back and understand your story and realize that all of us go through such similar things. And sharing that makes us better. And sharing that makes sure that we grow more leaders for this country that really, really needs it. So that's my story. Thank you very much. That was half an hour.
Thank you. So Basani is actually my big boss. I don't think she knows that, but now she knows, yeah. So I think my question is around how do you deal with imposter syndrome, especially at your level, right? And having come from African Bank, coming into Capitec, how did you navigate that space? Like you also hinted that maybe there were people that were eyeing that specific position. How did you really work around that from a practical perspective? Yeah.
So I think I still struggle with imposter syndrome. I don't think it ever necessarily goes away. So, having a set of tools to help you get through it is what's important. So for sure, it's the narrative, right? Reminding yourself that you really are clever and having people who remind you that you really are clever is really important. Like people who really believe it really, really helps. And then reminding yourself of the things you actually have achieved. So for sure, because I have imposter syndrome often, right? So I'll have it and then I'll come on, let's do the thing. And then I do the thing, and then I get to the next imposter syndrome. I'm like, but I did the thing last time, I can do the thing this time, right? So it's kind of just continually building up the muscle of, I can do this, and reminding yourself that you can. 1, 2, you can't do it alone. Find other people who, I think it was Kuma's point, which is so well made, about the co-CEO thing. You can't, I'm good at some things, I'm really bad at other things. So finding the people who are good at the things that you're really bad at is really important, and making sure that you involve them helps you to manage that imposter syndrome, because then you can, you've got the team behind you to help you to do things.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nothando Kunene, and I am from the Best Bank, Standard Bank. I currently work under the Corporate and Investment Banking as a TXB collateral officer. And I heard you talking about personality clash between you, a CEO and a chair, right? So I was said to have a personality clash with my manager, to a point of dragging each other almost every month to HR, to a point of me also hating taking her phone calls. But anyway, we resolved our issues and we work well together. But my question is, how can an individual handle situations where workplace bullying arises from a personal clash when it's not overt harassment, but shows up through exclusion, subtle undermining, masked as not getting along? And how can young professionals protect their emotional well-being while navigating this without appearing uncooperative?
Yes. Can you come and help? Look, you do the best you can until you can do better, right? But, I've had people like that. And I found the best thing that I could have done was to move teams. Because it wears you down mentally, right? And then you can't perform, and then you get into the cycle of just not becoming the person that you want to become. So that's the thing. I think. So you spoke about going to HR. I think you got to try all the things that are available to you to try and resolve it. And if it doesn't resolve, you got to negotiate. So when it happened to me, I was at R&B when it happened, and it was really, really traumatic. And in fact, a lot of people had resigned because of this individual. But I was lucky enough that somebody decided to help me, and he was like, "Listen, I will be the go-between between the two of you." And then eventually, I was moved out of this guy's team. But it happens. And I'll give you an example because I just never forgot it. I mean, this man was so bad. He was an Afrikaans guy, so thank goodness apartheid is over now. But what was really interesting was, he would hold meetings in Afrikaans, knowing I couldn't understand. So much so that the client would actually have to tell him to stop speaking Afrikaans because he knew I would have to go and do the work, right? He was like, I'm not going to get Basani I'm not going to sit her down and explain to her what this meeting was about so that, it doesn't make sense. Then he would write up, emails in Afrikaans. Then he would abandon me in the middle of meetings. It's all of us go through trauma at work. And I think it's an important thing to go through because it builds you up into a stronger professional in the future. But for sure, don't live in silence with it. And when you can, find a way out. And I'm not suggesting leave the business because the conversation you guys were having earlier about staying for 10 years, you'd said. I don't know if 10 years is the right number, but you need to, it's important to be in a business for long enough to see some of the things that you have implemented come to fruition. So don't, if you can survive it, try and find a different leader. But if you can't, then your sanity and obviously your professional growth is more important.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Priscilla and I'm from the Best Bank because we've got the highest net promoter score, net bank.
We do? A competition. I can respond to that, right? But I'm not going to because I'm a girl.
Yeah, you could. I know you'd kill me 10 nods. But anyway, so Basani, my question is, I want to tie it to the masterclass that I did in the morning, right? It was about being prepared. So in the interim, after your African bank stint, you probably took a step back, you spoke about reading novels, therapy, exercising, etc. But what did you do in the interim to get career fit for your next role? You didn't know you were going to go to Capitec, right? So what did you do then in the interim just to get career fit for your next role?
I'd actually had a dream that I would take a year off and then go do like an executive MBA or do like one of those short courses in a business school somewhere. That was the plan. But then because of COVID, my plan didn't happen. So I didn't do anything. In the end, I didn't. I wish I could sit and tell you I read a bunch of reports about banking strategy. I didn't. I wish I could tell you I did something really useful and meaningful. I actually just didn't. Because also what happened, interestingly, my mom became very sick. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out her health care. And that took up a big chunk of my time, actually, during that period. So the timing was actually really, really good from that perspective. Yeah. Life happened.
Hi, Basani.
Hi.
Thank you for your inspirational talk. I kind of resonated a little bit with your journey, so thank you for that.
Cool.
What I want to ask is that you have shared your journey, right? And you've spoken about times in your life where you've entered spaces where there's already existing legacy ideologies, legacy systems, and a different prehistoric way of thinking that does not necessarily allow you to enter into those spaces. So as someone that's young, someone that's hungry, someone that's eager to make a difference in this country, I wanted to ask, we often being told that we are overzealous, we're too ambitious, we're too fast, and we're going to crash very fast as well. And we need to learn how to read the room. Now, how did you get to a point where you're able to read the room, understand what your role is in that room, and reshape and own that room? What advice would you give to us, and how were you able to tackle that and immerse yourself in the journey?
I'm still learning it, right? I don't think because every room is different, and learning to read the room changes context all the time. So you got to do it. I think a lot of it is just watching the room. If you literally just sit in a room and you're quiet and you watch the players do what they do, because I think often, particularly when I was younger, my inclination was to want to know all the answers, right? I wanted to be that girl, like, ask me, pick me. And I think it's wonderful to know the answers. But if you listen to other people answer the same questions, you learn a lot more. And you think differently about how you could have answered it. And it gives you a chance as well to see other people do it well, the reading of the room story, and do it badly. And then you can also learn from that. So it's, I don't think there's a perfect journey for how you're gonna do it. Because I think also when you get it wrong, you also learn from that, because we learn so much more from our failures than we do from our successes. So I would say, I mean, for sure, I am very ambitious, and I do think I probably at times ran too fast, and I did, go splat. So, you gotta. There's no perfect way, and I think the challenge with somebody telling you, read the room. One, you must learn those things, but I think also it means so little until you've seen enough of life to know what it actually looks like. So my only advice would be, be kind to yourself. Again, read as much as possible and see people who read the room well and didn't read it well, because you'll learn a lot more from that, especially in a novel form, because it's long enough for you to really understand what happened. Or read biographies, right? Listen to podcasts, because there's so much information out there around how you can do it. But for sure, give yourself the space to practice it and get it wrong, because it's the only way. And I don't know how I don't know how to be unambitious when you're younger, because there's so much of life, right? You want to do everything. So, be ambitious, but also be kind to yourself. Do those things. And then for sure, learn your craft. Whatever that craft might be. I think you said do your job or something like that. Do it, man. Learn the things and learn them well, because if you don't, it will hit you later on down the road. So work hard.
Hi again.
Again.
So just on women's leadership, right? So there's the glass ceiling, and then there's the glass cliff, where they hire women when things are actually going bad, setting them up for failure. So can you perhaps talk into the glass cliff and maybe the role of mentorship in that, so that women coming into leadership positions, feel safer and have more of a sustained career, if I can say so, like that?
So the reading I saw on the glass cliff is that women more often than not end up on a glass cliff because there are fewer opportunities for women to become CEOs. So you often get offered the job to become the CEO when all the men have said no. And so when I became CEO of African Bank, I got a lot of messages about, but is this a glass cliff, right? And at the time I didn't think it was, and I still don't think it was. So one, I suppose, is you got to make the good decision, right? If you offered a role, research it well enough and know what it actually is, right? Is this a company that's already on its way out? And if it is, do I have the support to bring it back from the edge? Like, you got to do the research and understand it. Because if you make a decision and then you realize halfway in that this is a mess, then you're really in trouble. So if you can avoid it, don't find yourself on a glass cliff. A glass cliff sucks if you don't have the right level of support to do it. So just don't do it. But then the other lessons about just, always have a mentorship circle, always have, close and loose connections of people around you to give you advice, always listen to the advice, get therapy, read some books, all of those things still apply. But for sure, if you can avoid finding yourself, if you're not a turnaround specialist, because some people are just really good at it, if that's not your skill set, then, learn to say no. So that's why it is this glass cliff, that it could be your only chance. But I think, I genuinely think the world is changing. Look, I realize I often have rose-tinted glasses on. I tend to look at the world in a too optimistic way. But I genuinely do think the world is changing. I really and genuinely think women are getting better and better and better roles. And if you hold out for long enough for the role that's going to make the most sense for you, then do that. But if you really feel like, you want to go for it, then do that. But the world is different from what it was 10 years ago. So be optimistic.
Afternoon, everyone. Afternoon, Basani. I am Tebogo Moema, and I'm from Gauteng Provincial Treasury. I'm a municipal fiscal policy analyst. So I I heard you talk about how some incidences that happened when you were at, what was it? When you were at...
A different business.
Yes, when you were at a different bank, followed you throughout your career, things you couldn't shrug off. And I look at myself and, you said that when you entered your 40s, you look back and you're a completely different person. As I've grown older, I've felt that as well. And I'm like, okay, maybe I would have acted in a different way back then. But it follows you because you work with the same people and you move into different areas and you find the same people and you feel like that demon just follows you, you know? How have you been able to shrug it off or see a different perspective based on the decisions that you made in the past and the person that you are today? Thank you.
So one, you must remember, people think more about themselves than they do about you. So when you're worried that people are remembering this thing that you did 10 years ago, that's you remembering it more than it is them. So I think that the main thing is to put the distance in your own mind between you and that thing and recognize that this thing happened, I learned from it, I've seen the same thing, the same circumstances happen again, and I've responded differently. So I've learned from this thing. So I think that's the thing. So remember that ultimately what you're telling yourself in your mind is often much bigger than what actually people are seeing out in the real world. Then again, read, see how other people have navigated similar situations. And maybe why I say read, so on my way here, I was reading about the hero's journey. So if you have a chance, maybe just Google this idea. But it's a framework for how people write stories about people, right? And all of us experience the hero's journey. You go from, you lived in you live in Soshanguve, there's not many opportunities. Somebody says to you, oh no, you should try this thing. And you're like, oh, but it could be the glass cliff. But okay, fine, I'll try it. And then eventually you try this thing, and then you go through all the trials and tribulations. Things go wrong, people betray you, it sucks. And then you learn the lessons and you find your way out, and then you win. And then you go back to Soshanguve and you do something beautiful. Right? Now, all of us go through some version of that story, of the hero story, in big ways and small ways. And I think even the people who saw you go through something horrible 10 years ago, they've seen themselves change. And they hopefully are learning to have empathy for themselves. And by virtue of that, I think they learn to have empathy for the people around them. Not everybody does it, but I think people get it, right? That we make poor decisions when we're younger. Right? We really do make bad decisions. Think of your 18-year-old self. Bad decisions. And then as you get older, you make better decisions. And that's why more often than not, your CEOs are in their 50s, because the lessons that you've learned through life prepare you better for that role than purely just the technical knowledge that you have when you're in your 30s and 40s.
Afternoon once more. So Basani, I just wanted to find out from you. So Sheryl Sandberg in her book Lean In says it's not about biology but consciousness. This is said in regards to gender roles and the dynamics thereof. She also talks about empowering women in the workplace as well as empowering men at home. And I would add recognizing potential over experience. So I just wanted to find out from you, as a significant individual within your business, how do you ensure or strive for consciousness? Thank you.
What does she mean by consciousness in that context, though, over biology? Is an awareness of what's going on around you?
Yes, so basically, she used the phrase "mother knows best." So biology would recognize mothers as knowing best as opposed to fathers. But if you're conscious enough, you'd say both parents know best, not necessarily just the mother.
Yeah.
Hence, empower women in the workplace by through women empowerment efforts, and then empowering men at home by allowing them to do things the way that they want to do them, as opposed to taking control at most of the time.
And your question is, how do I apply consciousness in the workplace?
Yeah, it could be in the workplace or just life in general. I'm just interested to know.
But I feel like you've answered your own question.
Is it? Okay. No, I just wanted to hear your perspective. I'm interested to hear it from you. Yeah.
On consciousness. No, I'm just, I guess I just find it a little, it's a confusing concept for me. Look, so I'll tell the story this way. So I'm not married, I don't have children. So I've spent, and I still spend, a significant amount of my existence on work. And as I said previously, work is people. So you can't get away from people. And if I look at the people stuff, people, when you give people enough space to be who they are, and you help them to develop their strength, and you support them when they fail, they shine. If you give people space to solve a problem the way that they think is best, they shine, right? And they grow in the way that is best for them. And I feel like it is, for me, I interpret your point as having an awareness, or maybe giving people the space to figure out for themselves how they want to spend their time. And presumably that would apply in the same way with your kids at home or to your spouse, right? If your spouse does not want to take out the garbage, that sounds like a very American concept. I don't know what husbands do. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to wash the car. I don't think they do that either. But whatever. Right, Zani? Cut grass. Is that what they do? Okay, maybe he doesn't want to cut the grass. But he's happy to pay someone to do it. Then win-win, right? So look, I don't know. I don't think I can answer your question. I think that the main thing is nobody wants to be told what to do. People want to be told that this is the problem I need you to solve. I need to solve by this time. If you struggle, phone me or email me, whatever, and let's work on this thing together. But for sure, do it in the best possible way. And whenever I've been given that space, I've grown and I've learned more than I would have if I'd followed a formula that somebody else had set up and said, do it in this way. And then, of course, you must fail. Get it wrong, learn the lesson, try again.
So I'm at Investec. I'm a client support banker.
Okay.
So what I wanted to ask, everything you spoke about today resonated with sort of what I've been going through since sort of last year, but that's, yeah, we'll delve into that maybe a bit later. But I just wanted to ask, as someone who is an award-winning, two-time award-winning support banker in their role,
Yeah.
I'm struggling to then now secure roles in what I studied. So I just did sort of my postgrad in risk management.
Yeah.
So I'm struggling to now find roles in those sort of fields. So let's say fraud, or in group risk, or in,
Yeah.
those kind of spaces. So I just want to know what more could I be doing. We've been told, oh, go to school, do your undergrad, you do your postgrad, you work for a bit, but I've just found that I feel like maybe it's God's plan that my journey might need to take a bit longer, but I just want to know what more could I do?
Yeah.
Because, it's just been, I just feel a bit demotivated, so I just need to know how to
So
stay motivated.
do you think you're struggling to get a role in risk because everybody's pigeonholed you in the support banker space?
I'm not too sure because I am interviewing. I'm doing really well in those. I'm getting third round, second round. Feedback is good, but I'm just not too sure what it is, and I just feel stuck. Yeah.
Oh, so much love.
I really have you on my thing.
No, Kansani, I think it's probably a long answer, right? But just a couple of things I would suggest though. I think often, or sometimes it helps to go in a much lower role than what you were targeting, because sometimes it gives people the sense that no, she's really committed to this thing, and therefore, let's give her an opportunity in a more senior risk role later. Then the other thing is there a way, for example, that you could actually shadow someone in that role? Because I'm assuming that they're already in the bank, right? And you literally, find a way in your spare time on a leave day or whatever it is, but showing that level of commitment that says, I'm as good as anybody else that you would have hired, but I'm 10 times more committed, and I will make a success of this thing. That's all I can think of in this context, but it does sound like a hard thing. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah, please help.
I just wanted to help and advise.
I love it.
Hi guys, sorry,
Hi.
I'm not from the bank. But I want to add insight. I did work at the Auditor General and then I pivoted from CASA and I'm now in consulting. But I wanted to say that you might find there are other banks looking for you, and that maybe you just need to pivot to a different environment. You might even find that where you're looking, not to say that the market is saturated, but I've found personally it's worked. There are other places that are genuinely looking for someone like you. So don't limit yourself to where you're at and start looking for opportunities outside of your bank and your field.
Bona fide. Right, time answer that question.
Good day, Basani.
Hi.
My name is Sipogoshe. I think mine is a very short one. In the advent of trying to remain relevant and trying to show our hands up, in most times we overwork, we overcommit in the interest of being seen. How do we balance, overcommitment and even being taken advantage of with our sort of drive to achieving this, being seen in our complex organizations? Thanks.
So I'm the wrong person to ask that. I'm a believer in the overcommitment. So I don't know what to tell you. If you overcommit and you do the work, and you're doing it well, you're learning something, right? So even if it means you don't get the promotion in this business, you're going to get the promotion somewhere else. Or even if it means you take longer to get to that promotion, you will get it, and you'll have a much better foundation than anybody else who will have it. So I'm a believer in doing the work. I think that's important. And then, of course, if you're not getting the promotion and you feel like you're not being seen, it goes back again to communication. You gotta sit down with your manager and be like, listen, this is my body of work. What am I doing wrong? Help me to reposition myself so that I can get the promotion or the whatever opportunity you're looking for. But good luck. Do the work.
Hi again, Basani. I don't think you'd have escaped to this one. A bit of a controversial one. Gerrie Fourie, right, places the employment rate at around 10% or so. Unemployment rate, sorry, that is. Do you want to comment on that, please? And what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, having the background, being black, obviously, because it's...
I live in Stellenbosch. I don't know if you know.
Well, just what are your sort of comments and your remarks around that? And do you agree with the model and the sort of extrapolation that he's got into? Yeah, just what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
So look, I think it's been blown out of proportion, this thing. Gerrie mentioned this thing in an interview about something else, and somebody got hold of it, and it just exploded. And I think it exploded for a number of reasons. One, that you would have seen 3 ministers, guys, are suddenly asking to talk to Capitec. No ministers ever want to talk to Capitec. It makes the ANC look good, right? If suddenly the employment rate is no longer 30% or 10%. So I think that's a big reason for why this thing has blown up. Then the second thing is, he's right. So if you look at so he made the point, we've got 24 million clients. Kumo was making the point about how our executives spend a lot of time in townships and literally visiting different clients, being on the ground, really trying to understand what's happening in the country. It's actually how Capitec was started, right? Literally, the guys would go and walk the streets in far-off rural areas to try and understand the market. And you can see that people are making money doing all sorts of things. Be it the fact that, you've got the woman who earns a SASSA grant, but she's renting out her back rooms to be able to feed the grandkids that she's looking after because her own kids are far away. Or be it the mechanic who doesn't pay tax but makes a good living. Or the example that's often spoken about, there's a woman in our business. She's a business bank client. She got a degree in, I can't remember, like a BCom degree or something. But her mom at the time was selling tomatoes in the road, and during her spare time, during varsity, she would go and help her mom with this business. And then she realized that, no, man, if we grow this business, I'm going to make a lot more money than I'm going to make if I go and I work for some random company as a management accountant. And she grew it, and she's making 200,000 Rand a month with this thing. So, and I don't think she's paying tax. Now, which means she's not counted in your employment stats. So our employment stats measure very specific things around, do you pay tax and do you answer yes or no to various questions, but they don't go onto the ground and be like, okay, Basani is not actually formally employed, she doesn't have an employment letter or a pay slip, but she actually makes 2,000 Rand a month doing various things. because that's still employment. So it's not necessarily that it's 10%. Now, the 10% is a number, right? But it can't be 32% given what we're seeing in the work that we are doing on the ground. When I first read that 10% thing as a headline, I was like, oh, this is going to be such a problem. Because even I remember the pictures of we were driving to a funeral at like 11 a.m. In Valma, and Nyesachangwe sometime. And I remember as we were driving in, just seeing all the Nyape boys. When you're at 11 o'clock in the morning and you're walking the streets and you should be in school, you know we have a problem. Right? So I know that viscerally we have a problem. I can see that we have a problem. But it's a question of let's understand what that problem is so that we're able to understand the actual root causes and fix it. If it's about supporting small businesses, then how should we be supporting them better? If it's about helping kids to gain actual skills because they're not going to finish matric, then let's do that. But if we just sit with the 32%, and we're not going into root cause analysis and fixing it, we're not doing ourselves any favors either. I back my CEO.
So we've got 2 minutes to go, so keep it tight so we can get to both questions.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Good afternoon once again. I just wanted to ask a question that's linked to both your personal journey and the board evaluations I was talking about earlier. It's becoming not a new thing, but it's become a trend where the CEO is also evaluated from the board perspective on operations and all of that, normally commissioned by the COSEC, the company secretary. And the trend is that the stakeholder engagement or the stakeholder framework is not like a priority on their list. So my question to you is, how have you navigated that, especially moving from African Bank to Capitec, different stakeholders, especially internal stakeholders? And then the second part would be, how would you then
just
advise...
one question, we've run out of time.
How would you advise me, to kind of say to the CEO who's been evaluated that this is something you need to look out for, the stakeholder engagement and management? Thanks.
Yeah. Look, I guess different CEO assessments ask different questions. So for us, stakeholder management is a very, very big one. So it's definitely something that we look at. And also maybe it's also in reverse. If you don't manage your stakeholders well, your financial performance suffers. And we see this all the time. If our biggest stakeholder is the Reserve Bank, I can't tell you how much time we spend with them in different parts of the business. So for sure, I think particularly in the regulated businesses, be it the mines or us, you definitely have to be spending time with your stakeholders and understanding them better. I think things like ESG force it as well. So make sure that you are thinking about the community and investing in the community. And if your own CEO is not seeing it, then I guess maybe it is using the stuff that's coming out of ESG writing to try and make the point that if we don't focus more on our stakeholders, the downside risk is very high, but also we're limiting our own upside potential because we're not doing the things that in due course are going to make us more money in the future. I hope that helps.
Take us home.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, ma'am. So I work for the best, but no, best cidery in the world, and we produce the best cider in the world. I believe that as youth and women, we are over-motivated and under-sponsored. To speak to Kentani's point as well, how do you now ask for a sponsor or build a sponsorship program in a corporate so that when people who are overachieving but feel like they're stuck, at least they can get someone in the company to speak their names in boardrooms?
I think you must talk to everybody at lunchtime and see what their answers are. I think you must crowdsource the answer. Because your point is you want your name in particular to be spoken, as much as I would want my name to be spoken. No one is going to speak your name if you don't build the relationship with that person. So I think that's part one. Individually, I'll be building the relationships and I'll be really investing in them. And I know it's hard when you're building a relationship with someone from a different generation because we don't speak the same language. We don't have the same reference points. So which goes back to my point about overcommit on the work and hope for the best, and you're like, stuff that, right? So it's a thing where we have different priorities, and you gotta find a way, if you're really ambitious, to figure out, how do I get this person to care about me? Because they're caring about lots of other people and lots of other things, but how do I make sure that I'm front of mind? And that takes work and it takes planning. And I suppose the other thing is just about, if you need to if you can, influence your HR team to figure out how they can build a youth program where you have, whether it's a graduate type program or it's a program where younger people get to present to executives so you have a chance to be seen. But you then, because that's a more systemic thing that can help everybody. But if you're thinking about you in particular, you gotta just do the work, right? Build the relationships, work the relationships. Do somebody's job for them if you have to.
Ladies and gentlemen, Basani Maluleke.
Thank you.
Basani, I heard self-trust, I heard reinvention, I heard healing, and most importantly, I heard quiet leadership. She traveled from Cape Town, guys, to come see us. She's been on Ubers, on buses, running to try and come through to see us, and I think it is such an amazing honor to have been in the room. And most importantly, you have affirmed that you need to meet your heroes. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, good mother. Cheers.